I'll never forget the morning it all began, because it felt less like real life and more like the opening scene of a corny sitcom. The sound woke me first, metal scraping against the siding of my house, the unmistakable grating of something hard being dragged too close for comfort. My half-asleep brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe the wind had knocked something loose. Maybe a gutter was rattling. But then came the voice. Sharp, nasal, and unmistakably authoritative, the kind of tone that could turn a friendly chat into a scolding in seconds. I threw on a hoodie and shuffled outside, only to find Linda. Clipboard in one hand, neon vest in the other, our neighborhood's self-declared enforcer of community standards. But this time, she wasn't peering over fences or leaving passive-aggressive notes about trash cans. No, she was crouched by my wall, wire cutters aimed at the fiber optic line running directly into my house. For a second, I didn't know whether to laugh or stare in disbelief. "Linda, are you actually about to cut my internet?" I asked. She jolted upright, caught like a kid with her hand in the cookie jar, before launching straight into a tirade. Something about unauthorized wiring, hurting property values, and ruining the neighborhood look. Classic OA jargon. The funny part? The line wasn't dangling across the yard or taped to the house. It was properly buried, only surfacing at the junction box. This wasn't about appearances. It was about her need for control. I pulled out my phone, thinking I should record the madness, or maybe call the sheriff if she dared follow through. But before I could hit the button snip, she sliced the outer casing. Just a nick, but enough. A spark jumped, a low hum vibrated the air, and at that exact moment my phone lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number. The caller ID froze me. Department of Defense. "Sir," the voice said the second I answered, "we've detected interference with your secure uplink. Has your connection been compromised?" I didn't need to respond. Linda had heard it too. Her face drained of color, clipboard trembling in her grip. I arched a brow and said, "Congratulations. You didn't just cut my Wi-Fi, you cut the government's. See, my wife works as a systems analyst for a defense contractor. The secure fiber line running to our house wasn't optional. It was federal. And Linda's little act of neighborhood enforcement had just triggered alarms way beyond our cul-de-sac. Within minutes, a black SUV rolled up, idling low and smooth. Out stepped a man in a sharp suit, sunglasses in place, earpiece glinting, the kind of presence that makes the whole street go quiet. He crouched by the severed cable, like it was part of a federal investigation. Curtains shifted, blinds cracked open, neighbors peering like extras in a soap opera. Phones were already out recording. And Linda? She actually tried to confront him. "I demand to see your HOA compliance credentials," she snapped, as if the Pentagon hands those out. The agent didn't even bother responding. He just tapped away on a sleek tablet, confirmed a breach, and turned to me. "Can you identify the individual who tampered with a line?" I didn't need to say a word. Linda was already flailing, screeching about bylaws and community integrity, her voice splintering under its own hysteria. That was the exact moment she stopped being a backyard dictator and became something bigger, a meme in the making. By sundown, neighbors were already whispering her new title, Pentagon Linda. If this were a movie, that would have been the dramatic climax. But in reality, that was just the warm-up. The next morning, Gary, the HOA president, dragged himself up my driveway, sweat stains spreading across his golf shirt. Normally, he lived for sending those all-caps, condescending emails about non-compliant lawn heights. But that day, he looked like a man who hadn't slept. About last night, he started, voice wavering. "We need to reach an understanding. The board never authorized Linda to tamper with your line. We'll deal with it internally." I leaned against my Jeep, arms folded. Internally? Like when she broke into Eleanor's shed because her flowers weren't approved? No, Gary. This time she didn't just cross property lines, she tripped federal alarms. He winced, tried bargaining. "I can waive your lawn fines for the year." I laughed outright. This isn't about fines. It's about the fact Linda thinks her clipboard outranks the United States government. And wouldn't you know it, right on cue, Linda came storming across the street. Hair wild, sneakers smeared with grass, clipboard raised like a medieval weapon. "Those cables were never authorized," she shrieked. "You can't bring spy wires into our neighborhood without board approval." I kept my face flat. "Pretty sure the Pentagon doesn't need your signature, Linda." Neighbors chuckled from their porches, but Linda didn't even flinch. She thrived on resistance, on doubling down, on manufacturing chaos until everyone else broke first. That was her strategy, and she wasn't letting go. The escalation came fast. First, a formal violation notice stamped with the HOA seal, fining me $500 a day until I removed the unauthorized line. She taped it to my door like some traffic cop issuing a ticket. Then she somehow rallied the board to vote 3-2 in her favor. Later, Gary admitted he abstained because he was terrified of her tantrums. But I already knew her pattern. Linda never cooled off, she escalated. And sure enough, one morning a flatbed truck rumbled up, half parked on my lawn. A crew in reflective vests jumped out, unloading cones and spools of cable. At first glance, it looked official until I saw the logo on their van, Neighborhood Infrastructure Solutions. A cheap vinyl decal peeling at the corners. The so-called foreman barked, "We've been contracted by the HOA to reroute your non-compliant line." Step aside, and marching behind them like a general leading her troops was Linda herself shouting, "Don't let him stall, just cut it." I took a slow sip of my coffee. Got a work order? A permit? Anything? The foreman just smirked. "The HOA approved it. That's all the authorization we need," the fake foreman declared. I laughed. "You do realize the last crew who touched this line triggered a Pentagon response, right?" Almost like it had been scripted, my phone buzzed. The liaison's voice came through loud enough for the crew and half the neighborhood to hear. "We're detecting interference again. Please confirm." I did. 2 black SUVs swung into the cul-de-sac. Linda shrieked something about bylaws outranking Washington, but the so-called contractors scattered before the agents even got their doors open. One of the agents gave me a pointed warning. "Sir, if this escalates again, criminal charges will be unavoidable." I nodded, though I knew exactly what they didn't. Linda wasn't about to stop. By then, the neighborhood was electric. Everyone had seen the clips. Linda's meltdowns were all over social media, her new moniker Pentagon Linda trending well beyond our county line. A local news crew even showed up, expecting a quirky HOA spat, only to catch Linda frothing on camera about tyranny and surveillance. "No federal agency outranks an HOA's right to protect its residents," she bellowed into the microphone. I nearly spit my coffee, but instead handed the reporter a USB stick packed with Pentagon correspondence, footage of Linda blocking federal agents, and copies of her ridiculous violation notices. By evening, the segment had gone viral. Late-night hosts were cracking jokes at her expense. Most people would have slunk into hiding after that kind of national embarrassment. Not Linda. She doubled down. She set up a folding table on her lawn, slapped a hand-painted sign on it, "Protect our neighborhood," stopped the spy cable, and passed out flyers accusing me of working with the government to monitor baby monitors and smart fridges. Then came her manifesto. She mailed handwritten letters to local politicians, railing about federal spies burying cables under our noses, signing them on behalf of the HOA board. That move dragged everyone down with her. It was the breaking point. The board voted unanimously to remove her. But Linda didn't go quietly. She stormed out declaring, "I am the HOA," like some suburban Napoleon. That night, she announced the creation of her own rival government, the Neighborhood Liberation Council. She even hosted a town hall at the clubhouse, unveiling a homemade banner and promising, "If the board won't fight, I will. Tomorrow night, I'll personally shut down that illegal spy cable once and for all." Gary's jaw dropped. Jake across the street filmed everything. By morning, the headline was everywhere. "Pentagon Linda declares war on federal line." Pundits debated whether she was dangerous or just deranged. The Pentagon liaison called me personally. "Sir, thank you for the footage. We'll be ready." And they were. The next night, our quiet cul-de-sac turned into a stage. Neighbors lined the sidewalks, kids on bikes, phones raised like it was a block party. At midnight sharp, Linda emerged from her house in combat boots, camo pants, and her trusty reflective vest. Bullhorn in one hand, bolt cutters in the other, and a handful of guilt-tripped followers trailing behind. "Bylaws over Washington," she screamed as she marched toward the junction box. Floodlights snapped on. Black SUVs rolled into place. Federal agents stepped out. Even the sheriff's cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. Linda froze, but only for a heartbeat. Pride shoved her forward, and she lifted the cutters. That was it. The agents moved in, cuffing her mid-rant as she kicked and screamed. Jake yelled, "See you on TikTok, Linda," While the crowd erupted, neighbors clapping, laughing, even hugging like it was New Year's Eve. Eleanor cheered. Gary nearly cried with relief. For the first time in years, the neighborhood was united. And me? I stayed on my porch, coffee in hand, watching her get shoved into the back of an SUV. I didn't cheer. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I knew Linda. Her words echoed in my head. No government agency can override HOA bylaws. To her, that wasn't a tantrum, it was doctrine. And doctrines don't die in handcuffs. They regroup. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, glossy envelopes appeared in every mailbox, postmarked from the county jail. Inside was Linda's self-published newsletter, calling herself a political prisoner and urging everyone to boycott neighbors who didn't support her crusade. My name was bolded at the bottom, public enemy number 1. Some neighbors laughed. Others looked uneasy. Me? I just sipped my coffee. Because if there's one thing I've learned about people like Linda, it's this: they never stop. They just launch sequels. And that's the part that stays with me. This whole saga wasn't really about one woman and her clipboard. It was about what happens when small authority grows unchecked, when someone convinces themselves the rules they invent outweigh the laws the rest of us actually live under. At times it was absurd, at times maddening, and yes, sometimes laugh out loud funny. But underneath it all, it was a warning. That's my story. How simple dispute over a cable spiraled into a showdown that pulled in the Pentagon, how one neighborhood tyrant became a national punchline, and how, in the end, patience and persistence outlasted all her noise. So now I'll put the question to you. Was Linda just an over-the-top nuisance who finally got what's coming to her? Or is she proof of what can happen when community power gets twisted beyond reason? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you've ever had your own Pentagon Linda in the neighborhood. And if you know anyone dealing with their own HOA nightmare, share this story with them, because you never really know what might be lurking behind those bylaws.